Welcome to Gospel Lessons. I'm Kevin Prince. Today we will be discussing the temple garment. Joining me is Bruce Porter, a renowned scholar with degrees in ancient Near Eastern and Middle East studies, specializing in Semitic languages and religious history. Bruce has authored over 16 books and is well known for his research on the Pearl of Great Price. I first met him on a life-changing tour in 2018, which inspired this Gospel Lessons YouTube channel. Now, if you've never traveled with Bruce, I highly recommend it. He frequently speaks and guides on LDS-based cruises with Go and Do Travel. These cruises offer opportunities to connect with like-minded members and learn from speakers like Bruce. I'll be joining the Momentum 2026 cruise with him, and if you're interested, use promo code PRINCE for $100 off. All proceeds from Gospel Lessons, including sponsorships, go to charity. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit to another, it's kind of a commandment, but I feel it's even more sacred than a regular commandment, and that is the wearing of the temple garment. Because this is something that a lot of people struggle with right now. They're like, hey, is God really going to keep me out of heaven because I don't wear my garments as much as maybe I could? Or they're like, you know what, I really want to wear this top, so I'm going to wear the bottoms but not the top. And then, is God really going to punish me for doing that? And again, as we've already said, there's no punishments here on anything you choose to do. You just may not get the blessings that come from it. So talk to me a little bit about garment wearing, but specifically, let's talk about those blessings that we can expect or want to have in our lives by wearing that temple garment.
Well, I think first you have to look at what the temple garment represents. When we participate in our own endowment at the temple, when we go through our endowment, for that first time, we're told that temple garment represents the garments that were made for Adam to cover his nakedness, those garments of skin. Now, the word for garment and the word for atonement is the exact same word in Hebrew. And that garment was made for Adam. Adam recognized his transgression. Christ is told that he needs to go and prepare a garment of skins to cover Adam's nakedness. So that garment of skins is prepared. Blood is shed in order to prepare a garment of skins. Christ is told to shed the first blood after the time of the creation, to shed the first blood that would prepare a garment or an atonement to cover the sins or the nakedness of Adam. So in reality, that garment represents an atonement, because the word for atonement and word for garment is the exact same thing. And when we participated in that endowment, we were saying, look, I've been true and faithful in the all you all come church. Now I'm going to the temple to have to live a higher law so that I could receive further light and knowledge. This is what the children of Israel rejected. They didn't want to live the higher law because they didn't want to be responsible for that. And so they lost that Melchizedek authority. But when we go to the temple, we're saying, look, I am willing to live a higher law in order to get further light and knowledge. And part of that higher law is the acceptance of Christ and his atonement. And the symbol of that acceptance is this garment of skins, the symbolic garment of skins that was given to Adam because of the atonement and the blood that was shed by Christ in order to cover my sins or my nakedness or my imperfections. Well, that's kind of what the sacrament is. When we participate in the sacrament, we are partaking of bread and water in remembrance of that atonement that Christ provided and that resurrection, the flesh and the blood. Now, in my opinion, when we say, well, I don't want to wear the garment, we're saying, it would be like saying, hey, I'll go to a sacrament, but I'll eat the bread, but I don't want any of that water. Or I'll drink the water, but I don't want any of that bread. Or I don't think we ought to have bread. I think we ought to have sugar cookies. Let's change the bread to sugar cookies because that's more palatable to me than that crust of bread. Or I think we ought to have, to me, changing, and this is to me, and everybody has their own choice, to me, wanting to change the commitment we made to to clothe ourselves with the atonement that Christ made for mankind, the beginning of humanity, the blood that was shed, and the atonement that Christ provided for mankind is no different than saying, I want to change the sacrament. I don't want to participate in it. I'll go to church, but I really don't want to partake of that sacrament.
Or even more so, just like a rejection of it. I'm by not wearing your temple garment, you're rejecting the atonement in a sense. Is that going too far?
No, I think symbolically it is, and we don't teach enough what that garment actually means, and maybe we don't teach enough what the sacrament means. Most everybody holds the sacrament sacred, but the sacrament is in remembrance of the sacrifice of Christ as well as the garment. But we took on the garment when we decided that, look, I have been true and faithful in this part of the church, and I'm willing to live a higher law with in order to receive further light and knowledge. And then we say, well, I don't want to live that higher law because part of that higher law is wearing garments that represent the atonement. I don't want to live that.
See, Bruce, to me, not wearing the garment after making that covenant is like not wearing your wedding ring when you travel for business. The way I've looked at garment wearing for a long time is, all of the ordinances in the church are a one time for us individually. Sure, we can go to the temple, be baptized for the dead and all of that, but we get baptized for ourselves one time. We go through and get the gift of the Holy Ghost one time. We get our endowment one time. So yes, those things happen one time, but the sacrament is weekly, and it's a recurrence to remember him. And then I go, well, if there's a relationship between the sacrament and the garment, there is a recurrence with the garment. I'm literally putting it on daily. I'm re-choosing every day to put on Christ, to accept his atonement, to follow after him. That's what I think that's what it's supposed to mean to us, perhaps. I mean, that kind of came to me, and I try to look at it that way because I find greater meaning in it that way.
Well, I think it is. We even have reminders in that garment. We have reminders in that garment of truths and eternal concepts. We're told that we need to remember that the spirit and the body is in constant need of nourishment. And if that's the case, what are we doing for the nourishment? Are we spending as much time in the nourishment of the spirit as we are in the nourishment of the body? And you're right. Every single day, that garment represents our relationship and our commitment to Christ. And who wants to tear that up? Who wants to throw that commitment and that relationship away? It's a shame, but fads and popularity is dictating what we wear, what we want to wear, just because we want to be popular. Which is a shame, because we're not teaching some of these concepts well enough. When our youth go through the temple to get married, they shouldn't have to change their wardrobe, but we let them wear what they want to wear because we want them to be popular, or they want to be popular. But should we have to change our wardrobe? And now it's to the point where we're not changing our wardrobe, we're changing the garments in order to fit our the desires of our wardrobe.
It's so true. And here we have this popularity contest, or people that change. But if you think about, I guess, first of all, the blessings that you get from wearing the garment, if you go through and, you do initiatories and pay close attention to the promises that are given, there's some really special promises that are given to people who wear the garment as you're supposed to be worn. And if you listen to those and understand them, I don't know if anybody would want to live without them. and yet people do that all the time. They walk away from that like, oh, I don't need that. It's like, really, the level of spiritual kind of protection that you have, and protection from Satan, and some of the things that are there, they either don't understand them, don't believe it, and walk away from that because they're pretty special, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't walk away from the sacrament. And to me, the garment is just as important as the sacrament is in my spiritual life. It's there for a shield and protection, temporally and spiritually.
Yeah, and here's where we get into trouble with things. And this series is on false traditions, but it seems to me like if I was taught anything about garments growing up, and I don't think I was taught much, but if I was taught anything, it would have been that it's a pattern of modesty. Like that's why they're there, is to create a pattern by which, if you're wearing clothing that covers the garment, then you're being modest. And And if that was the only thing that was ever taught, if that was all you knew, you could see why people would want to give that up or change it or modify it or do whatever they want to do. But this is so much more than a pattern of modesty, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you. You know, the word for garment, the word for atonement is the same, and we should expect and understand that they are connected. To me, fad, popular fad in clothes. To me, fad is if it's impractical, if it's uncomfortable, and if it's ugly, and if it's expensive. That's what we call fad. That's what everybody wants to wear. And I just can't understand why we want that stuff.
It makes all the sense in the world. I think that helps people because, again, what we're trying to do is just orient people around maybe a different way at looking at some of these commandments, looking at some of these laws or blessings and things, to look at it differently so that they want to make different decisions in their life that could probably bring more blessings, both temporally and eternally. Any last words on garment wearing or the garment?
No, the atonement and resurrection, of which the sacrament and the garment represents, is probably the most important thing that we can do in order to come unto Christ. Recognize the reality and the importance of that atonement and resurrection. Because we can talk about somebody, but we can't have a relationship with somebody we just talk about. And knowing somebody is completely different than knowing about somebody. And we need to come to a relationship with Christ, because knowing someone requires that relationship, and the garments were given to assist us in establishing that relationship.
But if you're wearing that, consistently and in the way you should, but giving no thought into why you're wearing it or what it represents or what it's doing for you, I'm not sure that at the same time is doing anything either. It's kind of like going through the things, the motions of commandments and not getting any benefit of it. So I think that too, take some time to think about why you're wearing it, when you're wearing it, how you're wearing it, and what it's doing for you. I gotta believe that's going to bring some more peace and joy into people's lives.
It's coming down to those two commandments. Are we showing our love of God? And one way we can show our love of God is to recognize and understand why we are wearing those garments. That's part of that showing our love of God, just like partaking of the sacrament is creating a relationship with God.
Well, that's fantastic. Bruce, thank you so much. It's always enlightening. Thanks for spending the time.
It's my pleasure, Kevin. Thank you.
Remember to subscribe so future episodes are easier to find. Thanks for watching.